All right. Hello and welcome everybody to Parshat Vayishlach 5784. Sorry for my lateness. And hope we're able to get a whole class in within our allotted time frame. There's a lot to say on this week's Parsha. It is a beautiful Parsha. It is, according to the rabbis, we've said in previous years, this is the Parsha that deals with the meeting of Yaakov and Eisav, two different world views, two different perspectives on how to live life, and it's just there's a lot to say about that in and of itself, and we've Baruch H-Shem dealt with it in the last few years, and we'll hopefully learn some lessons today as well. Besides the meeting of Yaakov and Eisav and the whole scheme that Yaakov had to protect himself, and his wrestling with Esav's angel or person, whatever the case may be. Also, this is the parsha of the capture and rape of Dinah, as well as the parsha that deals with Reuven's very ostentatious act of moving his father's bed, the death of Rachel, the birth of Binyamin. A lot happens in this week's parsha, so there's a lot to learn that we're obviously not going to be able to cover in the class, and certainly worth everybody's attention one way or the other. In fact, I think that's a good place to start in the sources here. Here we go. Let's share the screen with you here. There we go. Very nice. Okay, this is the source sheet for today's class. I'm going to start with the very first verse. Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim, that Yaakov sent Malachim, whether that's messengers, humans, or messengers, angels. We dealt with that as an issue in the last few years. Today, we'll just say it's messengers, whatever they are, whether it's spiritual or physical, it doesn't matter. Lefanov, he sent them before him. El Eisav to Eisav, Echav, his brother. Artsa Seir, to the land of Seir, which is where Eisav dwelt. Sdei Edom, in the fields of Edom. So there's really not much I wanted to say about the words in particular or anything, but I did want to mention this very important Ramban. The Ramban, it's not so unusual. It happens every once in a while, but it is. It's not all the time that the Ramban has an introduction to a parsha, and here he has a few introductory notes that are worth mentioning. Okay, so it says the Ramban. We have to remember, this is fundamental. Not everything that happened in history has to be written specifically, explicitly in the Torah. If the story has to be significant, has to be important, and not just historically important, because there's a lot of stuff that's historically important that's not explicitly in the Torah. The whole creation of the world is very summarized and very unclear. So if we're telling this whole story and we're going into detail about it, there must be a reason in the Ramban's perspective. And he writes, Niktava parsha zo lehodia ki hitzia kadosh baruch hu et avdo v'galo miyad chazak mimenu. This whole parsha is written in the Torah to tell you that the Holy One, blessed is He, H-Shem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Himself, saved His servant. And He redeemed him and saved him from somebody more powerful than him. Eisav was scary. Eisav had an army. Eisav was intimidating. And Hashem rescued Yaakov from Eisav. That needs to be remembered. Vayishlach malach v'yatzilehu. He sent an angel in front. He told him he would. He promised that angels would protect him. He sent an angel to protect him, and he saved Yaakov. And furthermore, what does this teach us? A few more things. Shehu lo betach b'tzidkato. He didn't go and rely on his tzidkut, how great and righteous he is. I'm Yaakov. I do all these mitzvahs. I've got nothing to worry about. No. He went and put effort into saving himself in any way he could. And furthermore, v'yesh ba'od remez l'dorot. And furthermore, there's another reason that these are already. This is a third lesson. There's also a hint to things that will be in the future. Kikol asher era avinu im Eisav achiv erel lanu tamid im bnei Eisav. Whatever happened to Yaakov between him and Eisav, so would happen between his descendants and Esav's descendants forever. We will continuously be reintroduced to Eisav in this same way throughout our history. So he said that. And it would behoove us. It would make sense to follow in the ways of this tzaddik, of this righteous person who didn't rely on his righteousness, Yaakov, and to follow in his ways and do what he did. Right? And what did he do? Good question. Shenazmin atzmenu lishloshet advarim shehizminhu et atzmo. He prepared himself in three different ways, and we should also do that. Letfila, uladoron, ulatzala, for prayer, for bribery, for gifts, and for preparing for war. All of these things are important. Not any one important by itself. Livroach or hinatzel, and that, and after all said and done, part of being prepared for battle is also having an escape route, having a way to get out if necessary, and to be saved. And the rabbis have seen allusions, of course, to this history of the Jews in this parsha, as he will mention, God willing, later on below. We won't get to that. But on this particular comment on this verse, Al Eisav Achiv Arza Seir, that he sent these gifts to his brother Eisav in the land of Seir, this connects to what he just said. He says, Bavur Hayod Negev Eretz Yisrael Al Yedei Edom, V'aviv Yoshev Eretz, and Negev Yesh Lo Lavor Derech Edom, O Korov Misham. So the south of Israel was near Edom, and Yaakov's father had lived in the south. So Yaakov had to go through Edom to get to his father. It's not like he's trying to mess with him. He's not poking the gorilla in the cage. He needs to go to Eisav because he needs to go through that land to get to where he's going, to his father's house, to Yitzchak's house. Alkein pachad ula yishma Eisav. That's why he's concerned that Eisav would know that he was coming. This is not in accordance with the Midrash that says that Lavan sent messengers to Eisav, etc. But or maybe even according to that Midrash, you could say that because Yaakov didn't necessarily know that, but he was concerned that Eisav would hear. V'hikdim lishloach alav malachim la'arzo, and that's why he sent these messengers to his land. U'kuvar tefasuhu hachamim al zeh. The rabbis, by the way, criticize him for this. Ve'amru, and they say in Bereshit Rabbah, sorry, just lost my spot. Amar Bereshit Rabbah. They said in the Bereshit Rabbah, Machzik b'aznehem kelev. So somebody who grabs the dog's ears. So again, the poking the gorilla in a cage metaphor. The Midrash's metaphor is grabbing a dog's ears. Either way, you're exacerbating the problem. You're making a problem where there isn't one. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'darko haya mahalech. So he said, Eisav was already going on his way. He wasn't bothering you. And you're bothering him. This is what he's sending messages to say. This is what our master Yaakov said to tell you. Leave him alone. Leave well enough alone. He's not bothering you. And you could have gone without him. But he says, al dati, according to my opinion, though, Gamzeh, this two Yirmos is also a reference to an illusion that was going to be in the future. Why? We start our own problems. We spoke about this in quite some length last Tisha B'Av. God willing, that will be the last Tisha B'Av. And we talked about how very often in Jewish history, it's the Jews themselves that bring about their own ruin. So his example here is Malachei Bayit Sheni Ba'u Bivrit Im Haromim. It was the Jewish kings of the Second Temple. By the way, weren't legitimate kings anyway, but we won't go into that now. And they went and made a deal with the Romans, Romim, Mehem Shabao Beroma, and they even went to Rome personally to make these deals. So, like they're making alliances with Edom, with the bad guys. Vihi Haita Sibat Nifilatam Biadam, and they brought about through this the downfall of the Jews, as Yosipon writes. This is true. This is clear in the words of the rabbis. He's alluding to the Gemara at the beginning of Avodah Zarah 8b, where it talks about this. And it's also, he says, Umufursam bisfarim. This is also clear in the history books. So the history books talk about this, and the rabbis mention this in the Gemara. So it's very clear that the Jews themselves more or less sped up their own downfall at the time of the Second Temple through these false and bad alliances with our own enemies, and that is says the Ramban, that is alluded to in this event of Yaakov trying to appease Eisav when he didn't have to. He didn't have to bother him. He didn't have to make mention to him. He didn't have to go to him. Nothing. But he did. He and that's like grabbing the dog's ears, making a fight where there isn't one, and that led to that led to many of the problems that we're going to see in Yaakov's life as well. All right, let's go on from there and see where it leads us. So chapter 32, verse 7, just a few verses later. He sent those messengers. They came back. These messengers came back to Yaakov Lemor, and they said, Banu el achicha, we went to your brother El Eisav, to Eisav, v'gam holech likratcha v'arba meot ish imo, and he is coming to you, and he's got 400 men with him. Rashi says it's not just men; these are generals of legions. So it's 400 legions are on the way with Eisav to you now. And Rashi says in his commentary, Banu el achicha el Eisav, I'm coming, we came to your brother, to Eisav. Vayita omer achihu, they could have just left it at, we went to your brother. He's obviously his brother. We know who Eisav is. Why does it say we went to your brother, to Eisav? He doesn't act like your brother. He's acting like the evil, wicked Eisav. He's still angry with you. So basically, in effect, what we're saying is that Eisav is still Eisav, and he's not just your brother. Yeah, he's your brother, biologically. But in terms of spirituality, in terms of his ethics, in terms of his attitude towards you, he doesn't feel like a brother. He feels like an Eisav. He's going to hurt you. The question then becomes, as many of the commentaries like to ask about Rashi, how does Rashi know that? So yeah, he's applying obviously a midrash, Bereshit Rabbah. That's Rashi's source, but that's not in and of itself a reason for Rashi to write something. There's a lot of midrashim he doesn't write. He only quotes the things that are going to answer a question when there's a glaring issue with the text of the Chumash itself, text with the Torah. So Siftei Chachamim wants to know what's the problem, what's bothering Rashi. How does he come up with this conclusion? Dimlo Kain Eisav. If they would have just left Eisav, if the Torah wouldn't have said to your brother, Lo lomar halo ein lo el ach echad el Eisav. He only has one brother, so why have to mention his brother Eisav? Before some betachlit harisha, and he's Um, right. So hold on a second. Um, hold on. Right. Okay. Sorry. All right. Rashi is also answering another problem. So if you want to tell me that it's Eisav, so Eisav. Why do you have to tell me that it's his brother? And more importantly, why does it say El twice? So all of these questions are answered. So the Siftei Chachamim. All of these questions are answered by Rashi in this brief Rashi. The brilliance of Rashi again is that he could very briefly answer a lot of questions all at once. And furthermore, besides that, he was telling they're telling them, why does it say that he's his master, Eisav? Because he commanded them who that they should speak with him with the kind of respect that is due to the son of Yitzchak. One moment. Remember that Eisav is the leader of a nation. He is somebody that is worthy of some sort of respect, and that is also being alluded to in these words. Okay. Then a very controversial action taken by Yaakov. He splits his camp in half, right? Because he figures that there might be, if there's going to be a war, it could be that one camp is going to be attacked, and while that camp is attacked, the second camp can escape. We'll have more time to escape. The soldiers will be busy, carving up that particular camp. And so it says, chapter 32, verse 9, just two verses later. If he comes to one of the camps, the Ikahu, and then he destroys it, the second camp will be able to escape. Now we have a problem here, not of ethics, although there's definitely an ethical issue. As I said, as we've discussed before, how ethical is it to save some, to use others for basically for fodder, right? So attack them, we'll escape. So the ethics of that is definitely worth discussing. Although the halakha is very clear that any life that you can save, you should try to save it as best you can, even at the potential risk to the other, as long as it's only a potential risk. Okay. The other problem we have with this verse is the grammar, because it says hamachaneh el hamachaneh ha'achat. Achat with a taf at the end implies that it's feminine, as opposed to echad with a daled, which implies masculinity. Here we have a feminine noun, machane, which means camp. So the question becomes, because there are some places, as we'll see, where it's masculine, some places where it's feminine, what's going on? We're going to have a total of two answers about this. We'll have to start with the Rashi before we even get to the two answers. So machane achat hikahu, machane mishamesh lashon zachar ushalosh nekeva. Sometimes it's masculine, sometimes it's feminine. In tachateh alai machane. So in Tehillim, machane is masculine. Harein nekeva, that's feminine. Machane hazeh, zeh, as opposed to zot, is masculine. That's in Bereshit. Zachar. So which is it? Yesh shar devarim mishameshim lashon zachar lashon nekeva. There's a number of things that are sometimes male, sometimes female. The sun is one of those things. Shemesh, etc. And he goes into some examples. the sun, wind, H, fire. Right? Okay. The Emet Yaakov. Then we're going to go backwards to Rav Hirsch. The Emet Yaakov, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, who passed just about 40 years ago. So he writes, Im yavo Eisav el machane achat, etc. Perish Rashi machane mishamish lashon zachar, lashon akeva. So he says there that sometimes it's feminine, sometimes it's masculine. Nira shel tevad machane yesh pnei perushim. Maybe you can say that the word machane, which we translated as camp, can actually have other translations. Ha'achat, number one, ha'shatach sham takim ahale hanashim. It is the place where people set up their camp. In other words, it is the physical earth on which a campsite is made. In other words, it's the earth. And the earth, Adamah, is feminine. As opposed to Habet, another thing that camp means, B'nei HaMachane, the people of the camp. Lefichach ki shavo Eisav halo el hamakom yavo v'hu lashon nekeva. So we're talking about Eisav coming to a particular place. Then we're going to talk about a machane, a camp in the feminine, because that's a place. Whether it's land or a city, either way, it's feminine. Aval once he destroys it, once he attacks it, hello, et hanashim hu makeh. He's not attacking a camp like he's destroying the barbecue grill. What happens to who's he attacking when he attacks the camp? He's attacking the people of the camp. It's the people. So it's anashim, in which case it's lashon zachar, it's masculine. So that's how Rav Kamenetsky splices it up, that sometimes machane means camp like the land, sometimes camp means the people. Land would be feminine, and the people would be masculine. And that's how he understands this parsha. And if you fit it back into what we just said, all right, what's Yaakov concerned with? He's concerned, Shema. How come I can't find it? Oh, that's Rashi. Right. If he goes to the place, the first camp, and then he attacks it, the rest of the other camp can escape, and that's the people. So go ahead, Eisav, attack the tents, set fire to our refrigeration or something. Just don't bother the people. The people are the ones who are going to escape. So that's one thing. Rav Hirsch understands it a different way. So the second half of his commentary on this verse says, Machane as a rule is masculine, and here too is treated as such. Vihi kahu hanishar, that's masculine, if the rest will run away. But when Yaakov thinks of its destruction, he refers to it as a feminine. In this word, achat, we can hear the deep sigh that comes from Yaakov's heart. If Eisav comes to the one poor camp, oy vey, if he comes to this camp, that's the weaker, let's call it physically weaker at least, camp. Right? So that's the one he's worried about, and that's why he talks about that camp in the feminine. All right. Let's keep going. Next verse we're going to learn is chapter 32, verse 23. So a good 15, 14, whatever, verses later. So that night, as Esav's about to attack, What does he do? Vayakam balaylahu. He gets up in that night. V'yikach et shtei nashav et shtei shivchotav. He takes his wives. He takes his concubines. Ve'echad asar yeladav and his 11 sons. Ve'avor et ma'avar Yabok. So he goes and takes them to the other side of the Yabok River. Sorry. Okay. All right, beautiful. So what's the question? Rashi says that Echad Asar Yeladav, his 11 sons, his 11 children. We have a problem because at this point he doesn't have 11 children, as we'll see. But Dina, Heichan Haita, where was Dina? Right? Netana Bateva Benav, he went and put her in a box. So that Eisav wouldn't be looking her up and becoming interested in marrying her. So he failed. He made a mistake in doing this because he's trying to keep his daughter away from his brother. Shema Mutav, maybe she would have made him better. He doesn't know that. And instead, what happened to her is, ironically, instead of falling into the hands of Eisav and perhaps changing it for the better, she fell into the hands of Shechem. So the question is then, how do we know that these 11 children are not Binyamin? We know that Binyamin isn't born yet. He'll be born later on. But how do you know this? The Torah isn't always in order. Maybe he was a Binyamin. Maybe these 11 children are Binyamin. The 11 sons minus Binyamin. So how do you know that? How do you know we're talking about Dinah being missing? So I read somewhere the name of Rav Chaim Volozhiner. I didn't see it inside. There's probably a book somewhere that has it. But Rav Chaim Volozhiner writes in the name of the Vilna Gaon. The answer is we know it's not Dinah. We know it's Binyamin who's not there yet, because the Gemara tells us that the Beit Hamikdash was built in Binyamin's land. It's also a midrash like that, I believe, in Esther. It was built in Binyamin's land. Why was it built in Binyamin's land? Because Binyamin did not bow down to Eisav. What do you mean he didn't bow down to Eisav? Why didn't he bow down to Eisav? Everybody else did. He didn't because he wasn't born yet. So if he was born, then he'd be the missing child here, and not Dinah. So that's how you know it's Dinah we're talking about as being missing, and not Binyamin. We're not going out of order, in other words. Okay, let's skip a few chapters to chapter 34, verse 4. Shechem took Dinah, he raped her, and he wants to marry her. And Shimon and Levi hatch a plan to stop him or to kill him. And it says, V'yomer Yaakov el Shimon v'Levi. So Yaakov says to Shimon and Levi, after they destroy the city of Shechem and take back Dinah, he says to them, Achartem oti, you've destroyed me. The people who live in the land, sorry. So it says that, what have you done? you've bothered me. How have you bothered me? You made me hated amongst the people around us. The people who live in the land, they're not going to like us anymore. The Canaanim and the Prizim, and never mind the possible spiritual ramifications of this. Because remember, it's Yaakov's job in the world to spread Judaism. It's going to be hard to do. Nobody likes you. But aside from that, we've got a separate issue, and that is security. He's afraid now. You've just woken up the tiger. The Prizim, the Canaanim. These are all big nations, and I'm just you guys. I'm just me and you. All these kids and me. That this is the family we got. So, very short Orach Chaim here. Where Rav Chaim ben Atad asks the question. He seems to be disappointed in what happened. So why didn't he stop them? So you know why he didn't stop them? Nekarim hadvarim ki Yaakov lo yada. Ki b'mirma zu divra ela H-Shem. Excuse me. Yaakov didn't know that they were going to do this, and they sort of spoke in a with some degree of trickery when they said they would do this, that they would do this killing and this bloodshed. Ela chashav shehamirma haita kedei sheyikudina bebeito baal korcho. He thought that the whole point of this trickery was not to kill the city of Shechem as they did, but to just rescue Dinah. Covert Navy SEALs operation. Bust into Shechem, take Dinah, bring her home, and that's it. Well, yeah, he might have to go against. Obviously, Shechem might put up a fight. What do you do? Ola harog Shechem levad bal davar. So, or maybe the plan was not to do that, but to kill Shechem. Is the whole Osama bin Laden covert operation, right? So take out Shechem, and everybody's peaceful. Maybe that's what they were trying to do. Of course, that wasn't their plan. Their plan was to kill out Shechem, but he didn't know that. Not to kill everybody in the city all at once. That wasn't his plan. It's not what he understood that they were going to do. And that's sort of an insight into what was going on then with Yaakov and with the sons. And again, that explains in this verse why he's so concerned about something that, in theory, you would have thought maybe he knew about it already, but he didn't. Okay, two more comments. Chapter 35, verses 11 to 12. Yaakov finally settles down, and Yaakov gets a bracha from H-Shem. And H-Shem says, "V'yomer lo Elokim ani kel shakai, pray vague, go forth and multiply, be fruitful and multiply. Goy hal goyim yeh mimeka. You should be a I don't know how to translate this. You should be a nation and a congregation of nations. Kings will come from you. The land that I give to Abraham and Yitzchak, I'm giving to you. And then you will have the land. Okay. Question. How is it possible to be a nation and at the same time be an assembly of nations, to be a congregation of nations? Rav Samson Rav Hirsch, second time today, rescues us and tells us the nations that will descend from you is to be the nation that will descend from you is to be one single unit, outwardly oriented, and a multiplicity of elements united into one inwardly oriented. We've got different kinds of people. We've got all kinds of different varieties, different spices, different everything else. There's nothing wrong with any one particular group of Jews. Quite on the contrary, there's a problem with the Jew being all alone. The people of Yaakov is to become Yisrael, is to reveal to the nations God's power, which controls and masters all earthly human affairs, shaping everything in accordance with his will. Hence, this people should not present a cold-sided, a one-sided image. As a model nation, it should reflect diverse and national characteristics. It's good that we're different. Through its tribes, it should represent the warrior nation, the merchant nation, the agricultural nation, the nation of scholars, and so forth. That's what all these different tribes are supposed to be. In this manner, it will become clear to all that the sanctification of human life in the divine covenant of the Torah does not depend on a particular way of life or national characteristic. These Jews, they all study all day long. All? Well, somebody's got to keep the lights on in the yeshiva. Somebody has to work. Somebody has to be a realtor or whatever. So we're all important. We all have a part in this Jewish life. Rather, all of mankind, with all its diversity, is called upon to accept the uniform spirit of the God of Israel. From the diversity of human and national characteristics will emerge one united kingdom of God. So being different unites us. Because we have these different talents and different abilities, we bring them all together to effect this change in the world that H-Shem wants us to do. Accordingly, to your descendants after you will I give the land, might mean, as Forno interprets, and to your seed who follow in your footsteps, I'll give the whole world. Not this land, not just Israel, and not just to anybody who calls himself Jewish. The world will be inherited by people who act this way, who are unified in this way, and who put godliness into the things they do. By faithfully upholding their spiritual and moral heritage, there will be a light unto the nations. Which again is according to the Navi Yeshayahu, that is our goal in being Jewish. That is our goal in our existence. Okay, last but not least. Yeah. We get a count of the 12 tribes, the 12 sons of Yaakov. We get this right after Reuven's mistake, his sin, if you want to call it that. And the verse says, B'nai Leah, Bechor Yaakov Reuven. The sons of Leah are Yaakov's firstborn Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Vayishlach Class. Those are the sons of Leah. Again, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Issachar, Zvulun. Okay, we ran out of words. Anyway, so those are the first of the 12 tribes, the first 6, right? So that's Leah's part. Question is, and Sforno asks the question. We just had this Sforno in reverse. Very nice. He asks the question, what do you mean Bechor Yaakov Reuven? The firstborn of Yaakov is Reuven. We know that. Just giving us the list tells us that Reuven was firstborn. Just look a few chapters earlier where Reuven is born. It's pretty clear he's the firstborn. Why do you have to tell me that he's the Bechor? You know why? Shelo nafal mina bechora medina shamayim mipnei hatshuva hamigaet ad kisei hakavod. He didn't lose his Bechorah through heaven. We'll see that Yaakov takes away his firstborn rights and gives it to Yehuda in terms of who's going to be the king. It's not going to be Reuven because of this. But heaven didn't do it. Shemayim didn't do it. Is that because he was meant to, he was predestined to not be the Bechor? His mistake, his punishment, and the punishment started out homegrown. It started out here on earth with Yaakov, and then, as we'll see, something else happened. Let's see what happened. And the reason that heaven didn't do it is because Reuven felt bad, and he did teshuvah. And when a tzaddik does teshuvah, it doesn't matter what you've seen him do. It doesn't matter how terrible of a sin it was. If he did really sincere teshuvah and really stays away from that sin for the rest of his life, he did real teshuvah according to the Rambam. So what does that mean? That means he has been forgiven by heaven. There's no sin anymore. He did teshuvah. Whatever it is Reuven did, moving the couch or whatever, he did teshuvah for that. And that teshuvah hamigaet at kisei kavod, reaches up, grabs hold of the kisei kavod, the throne of glory. That's how far up it goes. Below nafal mimeno afilu ba'olam hazeh ad shehipilu Yaakov aviv medine Adam. And he didn't lose the Bechorah until Yaakov said so. Because that's what happens. Laws like that happen. They start off here on earth, and then what? Kedine Adam inyan kol mi shaya chayev nidui v'lo haya meduna. Anybody who is deserving of extradition or any other kind of punishment, that has to happen first according to the laws of man, dine Adam, and then is not meduna ad sheyedehu chacham bedor kamrina and Razal. So the only when the rabbi of that generation says somebody should be outcast, somebody should be what's it called? Excommunicated. Then the Gemara says in Moed Katan that heaven approves. Minalan the mashtinan diktiv oro maros. One of the proofs of that is a verse in Tanakh, the Song of Devorah. When Sisera was trying to run away, and on his way to Yael, who put an end to Sisera. So Devorah says, Oro Maros, curse Maros. Well, it's not exactly, or Meros, and it's not exactly clear who Meros is, whether it's a person or whether it's a town, who or what it is. Right? Gavra Rabba Palnia Dekativ Amar Malach H-Shem So when Devorah pronounced the curse on Meros, let's say it's a person, what's she doing? Who's cursing? Who's she talking to? So this is a song to Hashem. She's asking Hashem to curse him. She's cursing him, starting out, like I said, homegrown from earth, terrestrially, and then that goes up to heaven, and heaven listens and fulfills the will of the great righteous person. So again, Reuven was Bechor. According to the laws of heaven, he'd stay the Bechor. He was forgiven. But once the greatest person of the generation, perhaps the greatest person of all time, Yaakov Avinu himself, says that Reuven is cursed and cannot be the firstborn, now heaven has to agree with him. The lower court said that, we have to agree with that, quote unquote, lower court. Because lo bashamayim he is a principle of the day. Rules are not just because they say so in heaven. Sometimes the rabbis, in their greatness, By the way, they're very, very humble about this, and they try as much as possible to avoid this at all costs. One of my favorite stories about this, the Gemara in Brachot, where there's two rabbis, one is sitting down, one is standing. They're about to say Shema, and one, out of deference to the other one, he sees he's sitting down, so he starts to sit down also, and the one who's sitting down gets up. So he sees the guy get up, so he also gets up. Now they're both standing, and they're going up and down like a seesaw. One gets up, the other one sits down, over and over again. Eventually, the second rabbi says, what gives? Why don't you want to be in the same posture as I am? If you're sitting, I want to sit too. Why do you keep getting up? The rabbi says, we've got students around us, and they're seeing us say Shema. If they see both of us sitting down, they're going to think that that's the halacha, that you have to sit down when you say Shema. If they see both of us standing up, they're going to think that the halacha, you have to stand up. So by getting up and down, which is obviously not the halacha, by the way, that's not the halacha. You're not allowed to sit up and stand up over and over again. It can't be like a seesaw when you're saying Shema. But to avoid at all costs people thinking that they're making halacha when they're not, the rabbis would do things like that to avoid this kind of situation. But here you have Yaakov making a law, right? He's establishing Reuven as not the firstborn. You are not the firstborn, so then heaven has to agree, and the stamp of approval, the H-Shem from Shemayim, means that they agree with the tzaddik Yaakov that Reuven does not belong in that position of being a firstborn. So Baruch Hashem, that's pretty much how the parsha ends. Yeah, then we have a whole list of the descendants of Eisav. I think in previous years, if you're interested, look further on our YouTube channel to see other examples of other Torah on that particular subject, why Esav's family is mentioned at all. Otherwise, everybody should have a good night, a good day, whatever time it is where you are, and I hope you have a Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, of course, or comments, feel free to put them down in the YouTube comments. Take care.